Go get you some.
Phil's gonna share. Yeah, they'll work fine. Wow, that little bottle. Yeah. I can cut them on my head, they get stretched out, but they never come back. Let you drive us through.
It's sure it's a lot easier to use maps than numbers on a computer.
Yes, we really ought to just really talk about how we change this budget.
Some exceptions.
Yeah. Because that's the big, I think that's a good idea. That's the big change from the last time. Page 25.
Yes.
Thank you for all the work.
Hey, do we have some ending to that sentence on that page 25?
Yes.
That's
It
good.
was on the computer. I don't know what
Oh,
happened
really?
when it printed. It did something funny.
Well, I'll tell you what it was. I know exactly what
What
happened.
was it?
Is we made some changes on the one page. Didn't print, didn't carry it through and print all the rest of them.
It
How many
pushed.
pages did it?
Total,
Yeah.
now,
Now we're good, right? This
oh,
is
yeah.
all
Yeah,
cleaned
you
up.
Yeah.
got everything.
This comes out.
Yes.
First thing we do is throw all that stuff away and start over.
That's good.
I mean, it would be a lot easier to,
Except the one in the back. Keep the one in the back.
The very back one?
we'll just go through the.
No, I
we'll just
mean,
go through
yeah.
I'm taking the front. Oh, the front? The whole front? The whole front out? Front divided,
Yeah,
right?
just the plan gets replaced.
This part is-
Yeah, that's just trash.
Well, this goes
All the way to the blue?
yeah. Right.
All the way to the blue?
Chauncey will go through it if you don't,
Okay.
if you don't get confused what
Got all your
to
maps and all your,
They don't all have,
attachments.
that's different. There we go.
First 35.
Got it. Hello there, how you doing? Sure. Well, there you go, great. That's great, thank you. Hair color?
It's a lot of makeup.
You need these back? Oh,
Sure.
and this?
You don't want them.
Just throw this away?
Yeah, that's just trash.
Give it to Pam. Pam all the trash? She's not listening. Ah, this is, I guess he's gonna explain that to you.
Yeah, he'll go through everything.
Cost benefit analysis, that's a whole different
That
thing
just goes.
there.
So we can pull everything out of our,
Yeah, up to the
even the
divider.
blue sheet?
No, he'll go through everything
Okay,
and tell you.
I'm gonna
He's
wait.
gonna do that.
Follow the one by one instructions on how to do stuff out.
Did you? I thought about it. I thought about it. I thought, oh, I'm just gonna wait and see if they get a class one. It's pretty nice. I like it.
Attractions.
You guys got some good stuff to make
Oh, that's
copies like that. Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah.
For
You got that.
their pocket.
You got it? You got it?
We had it totally.
Still.
I mean, you've got it.
Nothing, you just have to be able to interpret it.
Everybody just thought that
Do you know how,
So I'll figure it out.
do you know how to interpret it?
I do now.
No, they're good. That's their job.
Well, I tried to figure it out.
Okay, good, because I brought them up.
Hey, so,
I didn't shake his hand.
yeah,
Okay, great.
I'll be presenting there, Mike. I must have missed something.
Oh, the map?
Oh, here it is.
Yeah. Back.
Call the meeting to order.
Very nice.
Has anybody got any questions about the agenda? Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Review of the minutes. Any additions, retractions on the minutes? I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Well, we've got a lot of information in front of us tonight, and we'll just get right to that and ask Chauncey to guide us through the review of the plan.
Why don't we just go through all of this paper that Erica passed out? And the plan itself, it's a total, I'm not going to say a total rewrite, but you got all new pages. And everything that was in yellow in your last one has now been corrected and replaced. There's a total of 30 pages, not counting the title sheet and the list of and the table of contents and the list of exhibits. So, and the list of attachments. So if you would want to grab them and then go and replace that in your book with what was in there, there's a couple pages in specifically that I'd like to talk about. Page 25 is the budget. If you recall, the last time we sat down with this, we had $8 million in what we called new commercial development, and we also had $3 million in site preparation and site development and demolition. It was suggested to us by legal counsel that we combine those under, call it demolition and site development. There's an issue with actually putting money in to commercial buildings, new buildings. You can put money in to going in and rehabbing buildings, but when you look at actually building a new building, there's a legal issue with that. Mark, do you want to talk about that briefly?
Right. Even in other TIF projects where the end result is say a new Walmart or a new Best Buy or something like that, the TIF isn't actually funding the vertical construction. It's funding the site clearance, the grading, the streets, the sewers, the utilities. I mean, it may all end up into one big pool at the end, but for the purposes of complying with the TIF Act, we need to be able to allocate it to what we call the good cost, the clearing, the site work, and things like that.
So if a project wanted to make application for the TIF, they would break down the amount for the site work and the amount for the actual bricks and mortar construction. Is that correct?
Right, and just to clarify, good costs include renovating buildings. We're only concerned about, or our bad costs are the vertical construction of new buildings.
The other change you see is on the 2013 redevelopment project. We had $2.5 million in for building stabilization, rehabilitation, grant and loan program. Now we reduced that to $1.5 million and broke out $1 million of that for the building rehabilitation at Main and Merchant. The hotel project is what that is. I mean, that's exactly what we're talking about. And we also have a letter we'll talk about a little bit later from the developers of that project. We'll get to that as the attachment we have later. And we were again suggested that we do that because it's a fairly large project, and it felt as though it was necessary to break that out and to discuss that in the plan itself.
That's correct.
We moved that $11 million we discussed earlier over to other redevelopment projects rather than under the 2013 project. Reason for that, again, is the same reason that we were suggested that we break out the rehab on the first project, or the main project that we anticipate coming forward first, because we don't know what that is at this point in time. And it's a big hunk of money, And it suggested that we go ahead and put it in other projects so that if something would happen to come up, we can bring it back to the TIF commission for further review. And that's why it was moved over. The total amount stays the same, $24,368,750. The 2013 projects, though, have been reduced to $8,193,750. We also now have all but one of the exhibits. Exhibit A is the map showing where the TIF is in relationship to the city and county. You catch up?
I don't have my
Okay.
little blue dividers.
Oh, they're in the back, in the very back of your book.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're not transferred over to our new
okay,
pages yet.
okay. Exhibit B, actually, we put two Exhibit Bs in. I mean, it's the same stuff, it's just one of them has a photo with it, and the other one does not. And I think we went ahead and numbered all of the parcels. We now have 300 parcels. And when you look at that Exhibit B, I want to point out three separate properties that we have, after we met last time, we reduced the size of this overall redevelopment area, but there were three properties that, after we did some research and we got information from the assessor's office, we felt it was, consultation with Tom, we felt it was important to take those three properties out. It's the old Rozier building, the old Bank of St. Genevieve, and the parking lot Bank of St. Genevieve. Back in 2012, those properties were still on the tax rolls and with a pretty sizable amount of assessed value for each of those properties, except the parking lot. I mean, it was minimal, but it was still had some assessed value. The business that's in the old Rozier building also is a retail establishment, and if we were to leave those properties in, we would have a hard time in the first year or so making our base, because we have to count that assessed value as the most recent equalized assessed value, which would have happened back in July of 2012. And so felt as though it would be wise to take them out. If not, we'd have to have close to $700,000 worth of new construction before you would get the assessed value back up to the base. Today, they have zero, according to the assessor. They're being assessed for not-for-profits.
If we need to go through the book and let Chauncey keep walking us through, putting our pages in, that's fine. But I'd like to come back to that last point you made, either now or later. I have a question about that.
Kathy, please go ahead.
Okay. For the not-for-profit entities that have been taken out of the plan, I understand that. Will there be some provision, or is there some provision written in for payment in lieu of taxes from those entities for the benefits they may derive once the TIF is productive around them and the city has made the infrastructure improvements?
No.
Really?
I don't know that any not-for-profits generally pay. Are you talking about the church?
And the bank building?
Not really, because I don't know that the city has any capacity or authority to demand payments in lieu of tax from a not-for-profit. I mean, if they're not taxed, I mean, I don't know how you would capture that.
Right, they'd have to contractually agree to make those payments.
I know you all are right, but I thought in the original verbiage, there was something allowing for the possibility down the road of payment in lieu of taxes, not specifically from these properties, but just in general. And Am I incorrect on?
No, you're not. Let's talk about that. Mark, correct me when I stumble. The taxes are actually abated, I guess, under Chapter 99, the TIF Act. The taxes are abated, but the property owners make a payment in lieu of tax. Is that proper?
That's right. There's a Missouri court case, the original one that found TIF constitutional. The way the court described TIF was that instead of just setting the base and redirecting taxes, they said you're actually abating taxes down to that base year level and then imposing a special assessment, what we call pilots, in place of that abatement, and then using those pilots for the TIF Act purposes.
Okay. Thank you.
So technically, that is the increment.
Right.
And it, that gets pretty much into stuff that I don't know that I'm capable of talking about. Exhibit C is the existing zoning map. Exhibit D is the land use, present land use. Exhibit E is the future land use. And we took this largely out of the city's comprehensive plan. I say largely, in general, there's a couple properties that have changed usage, and there's no reason to say that they're going to revert back. I mean, we no longer have a library, for example, in the old building there on Market Street. Exhibit F is the taxing entities and the tax rates that are impacted by the TIF. Exhibit G shows the property ownership and the assessed values of all of the properties within the TIF. And we got a lot of really good information from the St. Genevieve County Assessor's Office. And part of that information we was able to get included the year that these, they don't have every one of the parcels, but they have majority of the parcels when that house or that building was built. And that's kind of an interesting piece of information, so we thought we'd go ahead, and since we had it, we thought we'd include it. Part of, if you recall from our earlier discussion, one of the things we're looking at is, in order to qualify as a conservation area, would be, what is it, a majority of your properties being over 35 years old?
Right.
And you can tell there's, I don't know if we've got any properties that are that young.
Yeah.
Exhibit H is the current and future assessment and tax levies within the redevelopment area. One of the reasons we felt it important to drop this budget down somewhat is when you look at this Exhibit H, you can see that the current assessed value within the overall TIF, $5,985,980. In order to generate, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to the cost-benefit analysis that we did, but in order to generate enough money to be able to do all of the projects that we talked about back on page 25, there's going to have to be some stuff built, and there's going to have to be some more retail sales happen, or else that money will never be generated. In order to generate the $8 million and change, we're going to have to see our assessed values go up quite a bit, you know, by new construction, new projects. So we're anticipating that we'll have we'll need to have somewhere around $3.5 million of increased assessed values. We're going to project, and we did project, some new sales, and we're projecting somewhere around $15 million of new retail sales. And again, keep in mind, there's an inflationary figure goes into that, so it's not all going to happen overnight, but within 23 years, we are hoping that we would see a dramatic increase in retail sales if some of these projects happen. Now, if we were to include the entire project that we talked about before, you know, you'll be doubling those numbers. So, and there's some reason that you need to look at it carefully, I guess, rather than just say, yeah, we're going to automatically increase this stuff by that amount. So there's some real concern, I guess, that we'd be able to generate that much money if we make it any bigger than it is. And Exhibit I follows along that same line we're talking about here, showing how many dollars in pilots and how many dollars in economic activity taxes will be going into the special allocation fund.
Chauncey, can you kind of walk through that Exhibit I in terms of the columns and the relationships there and where things carry over? The first, the second column that says pilots 100%, that's the increment you were just discussing?
That's the increment, yes, yes. And there's 50% of the economic activity taxes as defined by both local sales tax and other taxes such as utility taxes, franchise fees on utilities.
Use taxes.
Use taxes, yes.
So those are all included in the economic activity column?
I don't know about use taxes. Because I don't know how to track that.
Did you mention that to Mark?
No, I didn't see that. Do you?
Yeah, we've actually been looking at it in the context of another TIF we're working on, and our interpretation of the law is that it is captured, but just as Chauncey mentioned, it's really hard to track because what occurs inside the district and what doesn't for use taxes is really tough to say.
I don't know that they're broken out the same way that you would have your, you get a sales tax report now from the Department of Revenue on a quarterly basis, and that shows, the retail activity by vendor, but it doesn't, I don't know, I've never seen a report on the use tax. I'm sorry. I mean,
I think I got it.
Okay. Exhibit J is what we talked about. This is a letter. Unfortunately, I did not get the original. I got this email to me today, and this is from the Audubon Redevelopment LLC. And Jim Ferguson called me last night and said that he would be getting something to us. He's the treasurer of the Audubon Redevelopment, and that's their intent. And
right, one of the requirements of the TIF Act is that you need information from the developer to show that the project's financially feasible. And so this letter is sort of evidence of that with respect to the hotel project.
And in there, you notice they're talking about, they're estimating $1.75 million, not including future capital outlays, to bring that property up to where they feel it would be viable, not only from a business standpoint, but also what would be required of them with the state historic preservation folks. Exhibit K Martin is an ordinance that we would ask that the city consider. This would be for providing relocation assistance. The TIF Act requires that the city pass an ordinance talking about how they would handle anyone who is required to relocate, I suppose. This has been used elsewhere.
Right, this is just another requirement of the TIF Act, and the statutes that are referred to in this ordinance were updated within the last few years. So cities all over the state have been sort of updating their ordinances to reflect the revised statutes.
And it would happen at the same time to approve this applicant.
Yeah, we could do it at the same time.
You had attachment 1 already. That is a copy of the act itself. Attachment 2 is the legal description of the redevelopment area, and what we've been doing on these. I think I got an old one. What we've been doing on these, we've been listing out the properties by the assessor's parcel number and the owner. And hopefully you've got one that shows 300 parcels. Yeah, let's pray that. I'll get a new one. No, I have to get a new one of these attachment 2s. This was an old one before we took out those 3 parcels.
So these would be the property owners that would be notified about
Right.
the existence of the TIF?
Right. And I do not have a attachment 3 yet. That would be the evidence of financial commitment from a lending institution. And we've talked to the folks with the developer who's supposed to be working on that. Now, they've talked to several banks. They told us that they don't have that actual commitment letter yet. The other package that we passed out tonight was the cost-benefit study. And what we did on this, I mean, there's quite a few exhibits, and they all tie together.
Chairman, do you have another packet?
You didn't get
Did
to
not get this? We'll work it out right now.
Okay.
Probably the very back.
And when we go through this, and what are we required to do, and go back to the exhibits, and I just summarized what all the exhibits say in the verbiage. But when you look at the exhibits themselves, we broke out what would happen if this project doesn't go forward, what kind of taxes the taxing jurisdictions could anticipate to receive. The second analysis we looked at is what would happen if for some reason all of the development would happen, but no taxes would be captured to help that development along, which is probably not a very realistic case. And then thirdly, what taxes the taxing jurisdictions will be foregoing in order to incentivize a developer to do the improvements. And so those three different scenarios are laid out in the papers. And like I said, there's an awful lot of numbers. I apologize for that, but I have no idea how to do it without putting a bunch of numbers with it. And the schedules show that impact for each one of those scenarios on each one of the taxing jurisdictions. One thing to keep in mind is the surtax on commercial real estate is not captured by TIF. And so any development that happens on commercial property, that surtax would be going through those taxing jurisdictions. So, that can become, it's not a great big number, but over time it can be, it mounts up.
That's when a commercial property changes hands?
No.
That's the
There's
annual?
how do you describe the commercial surtax? There's no taxes in Missouri for inventory. Is that right?
Right. I guess it's probably about 25 years ago, Missouri got rid of one tax, and to replace it, they created this commercial surtax, which is a real property tax on only commercially assessed property. And it's, what is it in St. Jimmy County, like $1.20?
Yeah, and actually it's pretty small. It's 21 cents.
Oh, 21 cents.
Yeah.
If you're in St. Louis County, it's like $1.70. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot of money. But within that 21 cents, that 21 cents actually gets subdivided again between all the taxing districts in the county.
They used to call it the merchants and manufacturers tax. So
So you're saying that doesn't fall under the auspices of TIF?
that is correct.
Right.
And when you turn back to Exhibit 6, we have all of the data assumptions that we made when we computed this cost benefit. And as you can see, it's going to take some serious development in order to be able to generate the money that's going to be necessary to generate the revenue that's going to be required to do $8.1 million worth of projects. Right now, we have an estimated sales within the whole downtown area, less than $4.5 million in total retail sales. And that's pretty light, for the what would look to be, your main business area. Will they be able to bring that up, or will you all, will we be able to bring that up to $15 million in new sales at some point in time? I hope so. It'd be great, but it's going to take a lot of different projects in order to get to that level. Again, for purposes of this exercise, we started with the number of projects that you all said, hey, this is what we want to do. And what the exercise did was saying, in order to generate that much money, here's what's going to have to happen. So that's my whole story.
Well, and the accuracy of what you say is not disputable. Tone, I think, is kind of negative. It's not as though the city's taking on an obligation that it can't meet unless that development occurs. We're hoping, in the definition of the TIF, that level of development will occur. But whatever development, whatever level does, will generate the revenue to support it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't mean to sound negative, and I hope I didn't come across that way. My point is.
Apparently you did to me.
Okay. Okay. Now, the point is that there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen, but if that stuff happens, this is what it's going to do. It's going to generate a lot of money. But you're absolutely right. The way the plan is written and the way it has been discussed, there's not going to be TIF money flowing to somebody unless they come up and they prepare a plan that says, hey, here's what we will do, much like the letter we received today, saying this is our plan, this is what we're asking. Now, the city's still gonna have to make that decision if they're going to do that or not. But that development and that type of development is what I think the city would be looking for. Somebody who's going to commit to it and saying, this is our plan, this is what we think we can do without TIF, but with it, we can do all of this.
Comments and questions? If there are no further comments or questions, we'll schedule the next meeting. So everybody will go home and try to digest this. Do we need to have another meeting? We're going to get to your comments in one moment. Do we need to have another meeting before this goes?
Once people
think
had a
so.
chance to review.
I think I agree.
Yeah.
To review everything and make sure that all the questions are completely answered. So, what is the target date to have this in front of the board?
Our public hearing is scheduled for
Oh, pardon me.
March the 4th.
March the 4th.
The 19th is over, that's a Tuesday.
I can't be here.
I've got 11, 12. Something next week. Monday or Tuesday, 11 to 12. 11th is good for you?
I can't do the 11th.
I've actually been called for jury duty on the 11th. Yeah. But Shannon could probably
You
take it.
think, they wouldn't pick you, would they?
They used to exempt lawyers altogether, but they started changing that later.
I can do the 12th.
February the 12th?
Chauncey, did you say you couldn't be here on the 12th?
I could make the 12th.
Oh.
I can't make the 13th
Yeah, I can.
or the 14th.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, that the 11th is a bit of a short turnaround.
What if we went
There's a lot of stuff to read.
to the following week, but not the Tuesday, the 19th?
Can we do,
I can be here the 18th.
I think we need to make a pretty quick decision on the date of the next meeting.
There's some
How's the
schedule on
18th,
the
February?
City Hall's closed.
school board meeting?
President's Day.
But that
Is
was
the 18th a school
Somebody's
board
birthday.
meeting, is that what you're saying?
President's Day.
Apparently, we don't care at school, we still have board meetings.
It's supposed to be against the rule.
What about the 20th, Wednesday, the 20th?
I like that.
I'll be out of town those 19th, 20th, and 21st. I cannot be here, but I don't need to be.
Well, I beg to differ. I think we need your input.
Yeah.
I'm good 25th.
25th is fine.
25th is good.
I can't,
Monday, the 25th?
Not Kathy.
I can't do the 20th.
Monday's bad for you, mostly.
Tuesday'd be better. I won't be back Monday either. But it doesn't matter.
The 26th,
The 26th.
I can do the 26th.
Tuesday.
there's nothing on the calendar.
Tuesday,
Tuesday,
February
the
the 26th?
Same time, same place. Okay.
26th,
February
correct?
26th, yes.
Tuesday the 26th?
Deal.
At 6 o'clock.
So, public comment, any brief period for public comment, sir?
Step up.
Please. And please state your name, sir.
My name is Timothy Kinzel, and my question, there's a vague, I guess, understanding when it comes to the community as to the taxes that they're paying right now on a piece of property. If there is an improvement on properties not near them, how would that affect their taxes over time? Also, another thing is, I can understand if it's locally near them, of course, it improves their area, so it might raise your taxes because of the values going up in the area. So, hey, could that be explained as how that would affect the
That's,
general citizen taxpayer?
that is a function of the county assessor. And that would really, I think that's the only person that could,
I think we can say that
qualified
there's no
answer.
direct effect on an adjacent property owner. There's only the indirect effect that may be as a result of appreciating values of all properties. So there's no direct impact unless someone chooses to participate.
The rate didn't go up. Nothing, which is an implied question. The overall rate didn't go up.
let's pull that all into one answer. That I think.
There is no tax rate increase being authorized.
No, there's not associated with the TIF itself.
But directly, obviously, there's a direct effect as to
Well,
adjacent property.
I live outside of the TIF area, and if both of my neighbors did major improvements to their home and raised their property values, that may affect my property value as well. So it would be really no different in the TIF district than outside of the TIF district if property values around your property were to improve, and however the county assessor equates that improvement to your property.
In my opinion, is of course, any improvement on any property is a good thing.
You bet.
But there's just some vague knowledge that they want to explain. Well, that would help.
I hope that answers
That
your
would help for
question.
the citizens at least. So, thank you.
I think that was a very good explanation of the non-effect is your two neighbors. And that's very clear.
Further questions? Yes, sir.
Are there any taxing?
Would you please step up and state your name, sir?
My name is Chris Miller. Are there any taxing entities that are going to be opting out of this program?
Not that we're aware of, right?
Probably the ambulance district
Yeah.
is probably going. to,
Emergency
yeah.
services.
Why?
The board is,
They don't want improvement in the town?
well, I'm just going by what the board has said.
So how does that affect the monies available to the TIF?
When we did our calculations, we took the ambulance district's revenue out.
It's unfortunate.
That's a choice, isn't it?
It is what it is.
There is no explanation from the ambulance district as to why?
Have they formally made a statement? I don't think they have.
We're kind of, I guess we're waiting. That's what they're saying.
Well, they chose to be out of the Azora, too,
Right,
isn't that
right.
correct?
And why did they do that?
Well, just because they could. It's the only one that can, right? Chauncey, if you can explain that.
I don't know how to explain it.
Well,
They have a
can you
special,
explain it?
They've got
a
the
special
option.
section in the TIF Act that allows emergency.
They have the right to exempt themselves, right?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
But do they need to? Wouldn't it be better for the community if they allowed the money to go to help the businesses?
I think that would be probably a good question for the ambulance district and their oversight.
They kind of got where they're at because of the TIF.
Okay, when does the ambulance district meet?
We had a meeting tonight.
Go ahead, Buck.
We had a meeting tonight. It was discussed, and that, the majority of the board has felt the same way as they did for the Ozora tip.
That they don't want to help businesses?
Well, they have the option, and that's what the board decided to do.
Second thing, could you explain exactly how much money is available to the businesses in terms of if we increase taxes, both in our assessed value, we say our building is worth $600,000 and we increase it by $100,000, how much does that allow us to work with? And then also the same thing with sales tax. Is there any way of explaining that?
No money is available, except that we can do projects up to the limits that are in the proposal, which is $8 million over 23 years.
The what?
Any business that's interested in participating would bring a proposal to the city and say, here is what I want to do. This is how much money I need, this is what I'm going to do, the project in which I'm going to invest, and this is my estimate of what it will do for property tax and sales tax revenue. And it's up to the Board of Aldermen then to decide whether that is the nature of a business that they think should be done with TIF, and to evaluate the feasibility. So this letter that Chauncey was talking about and the subsequent financing commitment would be asked of anyone who comes to ask for consideration under the TIF. So it's just, there's no dollar, the city's not going into debt, we're not borrowing money, you're making general revenue funds available directly to any business within the TIF.
Let me phrase it a little differently. If we redirect some sales tax receipts that we're collecting now to St. Genevieve,
If you undertake improvements and want to invest funds in order to generate those that sales tax, you would be able to recapture your investment from the whatever size project or whatever amount your project would justify. But you're going to have to do something.
Chris, if you
The
want,
city will have forms.
if you want to make improvements to your business, add on or do whatever, you bring a proposal to the city council. And they would approve that, say, yeah, you can do it. If you say it's gonna cost this much, you wanna know that if my assessment would go up another $100,000, what can I get back?
right?
And on the other side of it, it sounds like you would get, if because of that, your sales tax increase, you get 50% of the local sales tax back,
Just on local sales tax.
which is
4%.
you get half the 4%,
2%.
2% on your sales tax increase, and then on what would that figure out? What would $100,000
In assessed value, it's $5 per, roughly $5 per 100 assessed value, so $100,000 of assessed value. $5 grand? I don't know, what does that make? Have to add it up. $5,000? Not 5,000?
On the property tax.
Yeah.
Now, the mayor's going over sales tax.
Well, yeah, but 5,000 per year, you could stretch that out. If your assessed value stayed up there.
The increment.
100,000, you could get 5,000 per year, or if you did it for the 23 years, so this year, you could get.
So if you had an initial $100,000 in sales tax, the 2% would be roughly, would be half of the, what was.
Just certainly,
He's talking
100,000 assessed value is not a lot of assessed value.
2% of your sales tax. Pay for your project, and on your $100,000 assessment, you could get $5,000 a year for however long, because that assessment's gonna stay up there, and that increment will stay up there for the next 23 years. It will be an increment over the 2012 phase. So that $5,000 on your assessed value, you could get it for the next 23 years till your project is paid for.
Yes, but what you're getting is a note from the city.
Correct.
So, and the note will be for what you spent to achieve your goal. So if you're gonna move a sales tax generating activity from one space outside of the city into an existing space inside of the city, and you don't need any money from the TIF to do it, you don't have anything to recapture.
And to increase the property value, assessed value of $100,000, would probably take $330,000 of investment to increase the
If that's what
assessed
you're
value.
envisioning, then it's a good project for this.
No, I'm looking at $100,000, but you're.
Well, $100,000 works.
Generate an extra $1,000 a year in taxes. What's that? Not worth doing.
Maybe not.
Thanks.
Any further comments?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Meeting adjourned.
Awesome. Got done.
I hope you didn't get that from me. No, I don't think so. I just got colds from you.